Hi, everyone. The next one speaker is Max Wisshak, and he's a German caver scientist. I've been on several expeditions with him, and he is a wonderful person to know and an extraordinary sketcher. Ask him about being an underground etcher, and he can tell you what it's like to get overwhelmed by a sketching. All right, Max, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you for the intro. Can you confirm that you hear me and that you see the slide?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay, great. So during this talk, I want to talk about three relatively recent discoveries we made in each one of the three parts of the cave I'm working on as a cartographer. So the first one of these, this is the map of Lechuguilla Cave, probably not the first and also not the last time you're going to see this weekend. And the first area Stan Allison gave me, he was cave tech back in the time at the Cave Research Office. And the first area he gave me was a fairly easy one, was the Lebarge area, which is here at the beginning of the southern branch of the cave. So zooming into this, it's basically from the little white bastard where you drop down, you pass the shoestring traverse, get on this flowstone river into the Lebarge borehole and all the way where the water is gone, then it lasts water. And the new area I want to talk about today is Neuland. Neuland is a German term, and as you can guess, refers to new land or virgin passage caving. So just a few pics from the Lebarge area to give you an idea how it looks like there. This is probably one of the most photographed spots in the cave, but that's Lebarge borehole and the Flowstone River on it. That's Lake Lebarge. There is a beautiful another lake there, the Lake Chandler, here during resurvey. And there's lots of gypsum in the cave, as you know, as well in this area. And one of those spots we called flower power for that reason. So we did one expedition resurveying most of that to increase the detail of the map and the accuracy of the data. And this is the status of the map as of 2013, I guess. And we were planning another expedition. And one of the targets was this passage here, which, as you can see in the next slide here, has very little floor detail available from the original sketch. So a typical re-sketch task for our mop-up expeditions. And I sent it back, the team back there to do the resurvey and also to check this too tight lead at the end, which has supposedly airflow. And the team encountered sort of a moral booster at the entrance to this passage, namely an old flag saying, "No going leads ahead or above," with 3 exclamation marks. And a flag like that indeed is a moral booster because from our experience, finding a flag like that increases the chances of finding something good behind quite significantly, and sure did in this case. The team went back there, resurveyed, and they turned around at the miserable dead end, and James, I believe it was, spotted a small little hole in the wall, squeezed through it and a few meters up, and he was able to stand up into a good sized walking passage, and that was the breakthrough into Neuland. Here are a couple of pics of that. That's Derek following him behind, worming his way up and through this squeeze. And quite optimistically, he brought push rope. And but on the other hand side, by the end of that expedition, actually all the free rope that was available at that point in time in this branch of the cave was used up for exploring that bit of the cave. So good sized walking passage behind, like this one, upper level passage, but the main bit of the cave drops down and gets big quite rapidly, something like 200 feet of several drops you rappel down, and you end up in this nice chamber here called the moraine. And from this chamber onward, unfortunately, there was not going much. There was one passage going a bit deeper to a deep point of that part of the cave and to a pool, and that was it. But the team turned around and found a side passage that led to this nice feature here. It's another one of those gypsum glaciers. So that's the glacier front, which was easy to scale. And then the team walked along this Columbia ice field, as they termed it, into a really nice room that has lots of gypsum chandeliers growing out of the walls. But in contrast to the ones you know from the ballroom, those are nice, have a nice orange color here. So we call this one the chandelier wall room as opposed to the ballroom. And that's another picture of that part of the passage. And as you can see behind Beth, there's blackness again. So another good sized room. That's the largest room in Neuland. A rather complex room with lots of leads on first sight, but when you look at those leads closer, you can see that virtually all of them were sealed with gypsum. Only in this huge alcove, which you can see here behind Beth, in this alcove at the top of it, there was a good sized lead going, a dome lead, and yeah, Derek and James at the base of it, and they got all excited about climbing this. And in contrast to the moral booster flag at the entrance of Neuland, in Lechuguilla, if you find a lead like that, that looks really, really good, chances are pretty high that it's doing nothing. That's unfortunately pretty much a rule in the cave, with a couple of good exceptions though. So we put in a proposal to climb that dome, and here is Derek, and I would interpret this picture as him being excited about climbing. So he took on the lead on that one, and this is the first pitch on this something like 200 and something feet tall dome. It took him 3.5 days to do that, and at the very top, as James already told us, there was only a small alcove coated in corrosion residue, and that was it. And so the team had to rappel back down this really nice dome. So it took us 2 expeditions to map this area, and we consider it done by now. So this is the map section, and if you can see my mouse, this was the breakthrough squeeze here. And this is upper level passage terminating into a nice room called Quiet Crisis. And in the other direction, it drops down several pitches into this big room moraine with a dead end at the low point. And going upwards, those were 2 leads that led into this Columbia ice field, the gypsum front here, the glacier front, chandelier wall room, and this large room. And I would actually consider the climb referring to the name Polar Circus. Polar Circus is a famous ice climb in British Columbia, as far as I know. And this is the profile section of the same part of the cave. So again, this one here is the breakthrough squeeze. There was some upper level passage here, terminating in Quiet Crisis, and those are the pitches with the pits going down into the moraine and the low point. And this is this really nice passage here with the chandelier wall room, the terminal room, and Polar Circus going up to the dead end. So if you want to read any more details about that, Derek and I put together a publication on Neuland for the Descent magazine a couple of years ago. And in the present edition of the NSS News, we republished a slightly updated version of that one. Right, so the next area of the cave and discovery I want to talk about, and Stan gave me to do the cartography on, was slightly more complex and difficult, and that's the South Winds and Southern Climes area. So zooming on that one here at the black and white hole, it was not the Widowmaker, it was the black and white hole that was discovered by Donald Davis, and that led into the South Winds part here that leads up to Mother Lode, and in the other direction you hit something like 270 feet tall climb they did up into the Tradesman Maze to reach the upper levels of Southern Climes, including Magnolia Bayou, Flower Wars, beautiful places, the Rock and Villain Room, and Lake Okeechobee. And at Lake Okeechobee, that's where I want to talk about the story behind the Mythbuster. But before we get to that, a couple of pics from this part of the cave. That's in South Winds, and South Winds has some of the nicest aragonite speleothems, at least I have seen in the cave, such as this one here, or aragonite trees like this one. So they witness there's a lot of evaporation going on in this bit of the cave, so a good indication for a lot of airflow, which you can feel in this bit of the cave fairly well. And this is up in Southern Climes in Magnolia Bayou, nice dry lakes and lots of gypsum flowers. This is Flower Wars. Yeah, and that's this rock and Rillen room named after those beautiful Rillen current. Yeah, the map of this bit of the cave was so complex that I had to divide it up into 4 different levels, and you can kind of browse through them in the PDF version of this map. This is the bottom layer here. Then we go 1 bit up here. That's including the climb up here, and this is the trade winds maze. This is the more remote bit of southern Climes, including Magnolia Bayou and Flower Wars, and Lake Okeechobee, which I'll come to in a second. And this would be the uppermost level here with the rock and Wilhelm room above here. So the usual pattern in the cave, you have a big room above or maze area, something Hazel's going to talk about as well. And here at the southern tip of it, you can see here, that's the line plot of the southwestern branch of the cave. So we, of course, tried to do this link, which would create a giant loop. And this loop closure would be really helpful for improving the accuracy of the data in the cave. So we pushed really hard in this direction and we made it almost there. We found passage with good airflow, but all pinched out into 2 tight passages. So we didn't do the connection, and the next approach should probably be from the other side, so from the K2 area in the southern branch. So a level back down, and if we look at the southern limit of it, that's really nice passage here that includes Lake Okeechobee. And this lake has a lead behind it, and that lead was open for about 20 years. It was one of the most enigmatic leads in the cave, and Donald Davies already told that this is one of the best leads in the cave, but permission was never granted to cross that lake for good reason, because the policy of the park is not to touch pristine bodies of water, because there may or may not be endemic microbes living in this water. So Stan and Dale were very clear about that we would have to push every other lead in this part of the cave that could potentially bypass this lead before they would even think about giving us permission to go there. So fair enough, we did, and we almost succeeded with this approach, and we found this passage here, miserably tight, but it went parallel to the main bit here, and yeah, it got too tight, unfortunately. We also pushed up this stuff here, which all got too tight, so no chance to make any progress. So a couple of pictures about this area. This is the entrance to the actual room with the Lake Okeechobee in it. It's all pristine stuff, so we going in there with clean gear. Nice draperies along the walls. Nice popcorn trees here. Beth sitting next to it. Close up of this calcite popcorn. Yeah, and on the other side of those 2 trees, that's where the lake starts. And this is looking towards the far side of the lake. And that's this famous lead of Lake Okeechobee. So when we got there, we spotted yet another chance to potentially bypass that lead on the lake, which was a hole in the ceiling where flowstone was emerging from. So this was about here, just a few meters from the shore of Lake Okeechobee. And we put in a proposal to climb that, and it was Derek who joined us on this trip. It was the last expedition Peter Bosted did into this cave, and he gave us the chance to go up there and do this climb. So here's Derek doing the first moves on this mainly free climb with rather poor options to protect, and he made it up to this bit here and was able to place a solid anchor. But from there onwards, there was not a lot to use, either as handholds or for protection. So this is the uppermost few meters, and it was quite scary, at least for my taste. And I wasn't even daring to take a picture when he did these final moves, but he made it safely up there. And he disappeared in this hole here up there, and he reappeared maybe 3 seconds later and said, "Max, this is not good, looking good." So this was a dead end, and it was the last chance we had to really find a bypass to the lake. So the next strategy was to put in a proposal once again after many failed attempts to cross this lake. And by that time, Rod and Erin had moved into the cave research offices, and they approved our proposal to tackle this lead. And we had a strategy to do that by minimizing the impact to the water. And the strategy was that we were using this watertight trousers here. We had sterile booties on top of that to protect the trousers. We had sterile laboratory gloves, and we had the strategy that one of us should go first, James in this case, and see if anything goes, and only if something goes and there's a lot to map, that the others would follow. So James got ready to do that, and here is James at the beginning of the lake, and the technique worked out perfectly well. He made it to the other side, and that was it, because there was only this room back there, and it was all sealed with flowstone. It was a beautiful room though, and he took a bunch of pictures in there. And that's the view looking back towards the lead where he came from. So he was able to solo survey that, of course, with just 2 shots. And here's the finished map with this bit. And yeah, you can imagine why we named it the Mythbuster. Okay, so far the second discovery and area in the cave I wanted to talk about. And if you want to read a bit more about that, John Lyles and I put together a publication about that 2 years ago for the NSS News. So the final bit and the final area is the Nearwest. So that's basically the beginning of the western branch of the cave. It starts at the bottom of the Great White Way here. It goes through deep secrets along Cam, there's Lake Louise, the water spot, and so all the way to the western borehole. There's also an upper level passage here leading up to Neverland, where Art and Kathy's team did this incredible climb going up to Neverland, and Art is going to talk about this major discovery in his talk. So the discovery I want to talk about today is called the Barite Boulevard. And here just a few pics again from the near western part of the cave. This is Deep Sea's camp, our main base for many, many expeditions in the cave. And I think one of the nicest camps in the cave. This is the water spot at Lake Louise. Good sized passage here in the Fuba branch. And there's lots of really good formations in this bit of the cave. This is Red Sea, nice aragonite trees. There's the type locality, so to speak, of the subaqueous halictites in a place called Pellucidar. And there are also these subaqueous barite crystals, which are going to be the subject of my scientific talk tomorrow. Yeah, and the map is even more mazy and more labyrinthine than southern Climes. So I had to divide it up into 6 levels in this case. So this is the lowermost level here. That's all the mammillary level, which was once flooded, including the camp right in the middle. So when we were working on this, our nearest objectives, our nearest leads to push were just literally 1 minute away from camp, which was a nice change from having been working in the southern Climes. For example, if you want to get to Lake Okeechobee from Deep Sea's camp, that's about 3 to 4 hours travel time one way. And here we had much more time to sketch and much more chances to get sketchy burnout too. So this is the lowermost level, 1 level up with Deep Secrets, the Fortress of Chaos, the Red Sea. Another level up, there's Pellucidar and Barsoom, the Needle Park Maze, the Western Borehole. Another level up here with the Fuba branch, the big passages, again, Needle Park Maze. There is another level up here, Unlimited Devotion. That's the climb that leads to Neverland and ultimately Neverland. The Needle Park Maze upper level here, place called Blanca Navidad. That's where I'm going to talk about in a few seconds. And just here for the sake of completeness again, the uppermost level, that is the level that includes only the climb in Neverland and this huge new area called Neverland. So back down 1 level, that's a closed area called Blanca Navidad. It's a very special area because it has lots of really rare cave minerals and speleothems, and such as those barite crystals I showed you earlier. And we were reworking this area, doing some resurveying and lead checks, and it was pretty much the same story like with Lake Okeechobee. There was one lead right in the center here called the Lake of Liquid Sky. And this was the only remaining lead after we had ticked off all the other potential leads in the area. So that was the chance for us to put in a proposal to cross that lake. This is the original draft of this lake by Montgomery. And as you can see here on the lower left, that's the profile section. It says appears to go up and get bigger. So despite of it being a good looking lead, we wanted to try and get there and across. And we knew it's going to be dangerous because there are sharks living in this water here. But we tried it anyway. So we put in a proposal, and we very much appreciate that Rod and Erin gave us permission also to cross this lake. And we used a bit of the same strategy than for the Lake Okeechobee. Only in this case, it was my turn to push, and we didn't use only trousers because we expected the water to be a bit deeper. So we used full body immersion suits. So they have sealed off gloves and booties on it. And so this way we were able to cross water that is 5 to 6 feet deep. So we chose the tallest people in the team to get there. And that's me at the beginning of that lake, where it starts out really shallow and then it gets deeper. And past that lake, it got quickly clear that there's too much passage for me to solo survey. So I asked the other two guys to join. And this is Andy and James following me behind in the lake. And this is Andy here. Just made it across the deepest bit. So the technique again worked out perfectly well. We made it over there without getting water in our suites. And this is Andy here on the far side of the lake. And as you can see right behind him, the lake actually sumps. So there is passage continuing underwater, which we couldn't do, of course, and probably no one will ever do. But we got out of the water and there was really nice passage ahead, and also very interesting speleothems again. So those are another example of those subaqueous helictites, and it's a very typical situation for them to develop. You have gypsum right above this flowstone ledge here, and water that is in contact with the gypsum and carries lots of sulfate and gets into the water here and mixes with the water in the pool. That's where the common ion effect, the so-called common ion effect, is in action, and that leads to the precipitation of calcite, and those helictites form. This is another nice example for that kind of setting. We have a side passage here with gypsum inside. There's water draining into that in contact with the gypsum and flowing down here into the pool. And right there, you see the subaqueous helictites forming. Only that this case here, they are kind of different from all the ones we have seen previously, because they appear to form first probably by surface tension along the surface of the water. And from that part, they drop down vertically into the water. We also found a very nice patch here of elemental sulfur on top of another gypsum glacier. And we found more pristine pools. This is a fairly interesting pool because on the one hand side, it has really nice pool fingers on it. There you see those. So this witnesses microbial activity in the pool. And also, like you can see in this corner here, there are the
5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm almost done. That's good. Here in this corner of the pool, you can see those bluish crystals, and that's the barite I'm going to talk about tomorrow. A very rare feature in the cave. We found more of those barite crystals here growing on the flowstone. And we found another pool with crystals that are not bluish, but more orangish to yellow in color. So a new color version of those barite crystals. Because of all that barite in this part of the cave, we named it Barite Boulevard. So that is this bit of the cave. We have Lake of Liquid Sky here. And that's the continuation of the passage going up a flowstone cascade past these barite crystals in the pools. Here's the sulfur on the gypsum, and here's a bit of a climb James was able to do. And he made it up into this last bit of the passage where the passage was unfortunately choked by flowstone. But this whole direction, this whole fissure, this passage is developed on, is the same fissure where Treehouse and Neverland is developed in. This might actually be the same source of flowstone into pouring into both passages. Okay, and it was on that day or the day after, I don't know, where we actually passed these 150 miles of survey in the cave. So not our, merit to do that, but we just happened to be in the cave when we passed that magical number. So this was the team. This is Sean Thomas, Andy Armstrong, myself, Hazel Barton, Beth Cordridge, and James Hunter on the last day of the trip, where we were celebrating the 150 miles in the successful expedition. So if you want to read a bit more about that, there is just a short note I put together in the January issue of the NS News this year, and where I reported about the 150 miles and this new discovery of the Barite Boulevard. So that's it from my side. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and also thanks a lot to Hazel and her team for putting this whole meeting here together, which so nicely brings together cavers from around the world who share a passion for that fascinating cave. Thank you a lot.